All right. Good morning, Art. How's it going?
Pretty good, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I think I'm catching up on sleep after these incidents over the last couple days. So hopefully this guidance we can give everybody today will help them avoid that lack of sleep for themselves.
Yeah, that's right. You've been on a couple of ransomware gigs over this weekend?
Yeah, there was some ransomware that happened, some business email compromises, some people's email accounts were taken over, and of course they were sending out malware from their email accounts. And then there was one client that had a banking Trojan on their network and was stealing all their creds and banking information. So just juggling all that, it's been a lot.
Yeah, no, I know. I've seen some of the chatter internally on how active we've been, which is interesting because in 2022, last year, we kind of saw a lull in some of the activity that we had just seen growing and growing in years past. So um,
Yeah,
seems like
I think there was a
20,
pivot in
yeah,
2022 from like ransomware to ransomware plus financial attack now.
interesting. Well, that's good stuff. Well, it's awesome. It's very timely that we're kicking this off, and we're going to be talking today about Are You Cybersecurity Ready? This is the first of a series of webinars that we'll be running in order to take people through the process of becoming cybersecurity ready, which is a constant evolution, and it is a process. It's not something you can just snap your fingers and have happen overnight. So I'm Steve Brown. I am the VP of Sales here at Airiam, and here with me is our resident expert in all things IT and cybersecurity, Art O'Kane. He is one of our field CISOs and CIOs at Airiam, working with a lot of our clients on their IT and cybersecurity strategy. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So real quick, we have some people that's joined us today that know a little bit about Airiam, and then we've got some others that are newer to the Airiam organization. So Airiam is the combination of 5 amazing companies that have all been in existence for anywhere between 15 and 20 plus years in the IT and cybersecurity space. So we've got a lot of history and experience in the IT world, and in the last decade, a really strong presence in cybersecurity, both prevention and recovery. So we offer best-in-class IT management products and services, cybersecurity platform, and we're here to try to help create more value for businesses through resilience. And as we were just talking about, as we kick this off, we've got a tremendous amount of frontline experience to inform our protection. What does that mean, frontline experience? That means we are constantly responding to cybersecurity incidents that are occurring, and we've been doing that for the past 5-7 years, and in the last 5 really gotten a lot of repetitions under our belt. We've responded 50,000 plus hours responding to ransomware and cybersecurity incidents, and they're constantly changing how they're attacking. Every year, we're responding to 100 plus of these incidents for both small businesses, ranging from a couple of employees all the way up to Fortune 100 companies. So cyber criminals, they don't discriminate. They attack small, medium, large, whatever they can get into, wherever there is risk, they are going to attack. And with that experience, we've recovered 25,000 plus servers and workstations, networks that range from us working to decrypt them, recover them from scratch, or restore them from backups that we may be able to have. And with all of this, we've built some really great products and preventive solutions that come with a $2 million ransomware recovery guarantee for your organization in the event that something does happen, because nothing is foolproof. If someone wants to get in bad enough and they put enough resources, energy into it, they're bound to get in. So with our solutions, we were able to offer a $2 million ransomware recovery guarantee with that. And as I was mentioning, we work with companies small and large, from regional small businesses all the way up to Fortune 100 companies. Here's a couple of examples of the organizations that we work with. And the 5 companies that we've put together, we have a physical presence and offices in Central Pennsylvania, Eastern Shore of Maryland, the DC metro area, Miami, Florida, Houston, Texas, and Milwaukee and the Chicago suburbs.
I think we need to get some orange on the left side of that country there too.
Yeah. And I mean, we have a lot of remote workers that probably can fill in some of those dots there.
Yep.
All right. So with all that out of the way, we're here to talk about cybersecurity and how the threat landscape has evolved. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the much smarter and brighter Art O'Kane.
All right, Steve, you're just full of flattery. Yeah, so we've seen a lot of evolution over the last couple of years. You know, ransomware had its biggest year in 2021, and that was really a scary year for everyone because there was so much ransomware happening at small businesses, large businesses, municipalities, school districts. It didn't really matter who you were. Ransomware touched you in some way, but what that really amplified is the need for resilience and security. And so since there's such this need now, and everyone is being affected, one of the things that we're trying to ask here is on a scale of 1 to 10, how cybersecurity ready is your organization? And so when you're taking this poll, I know that you're tempted to be really confident. One thing to think about is just, do you have a way to identify if somebody is in your network right now?
That's a good one. There's probably a couple other items that.
Oh yeah. yeah. I mean, if you haven't submitted the poll yet, also, you could think about, is there MFA on your email and your VPN?
What's MFA, Art?
Multi-factor authentication. Does something other than a password challenge you to get into that network?
I usually just stick with password 123.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what, I mean, that's, the hackers love that one too. So, I mean, then you're just really leaning on that MFA, the whole concept is if you have MFA, they could have your password and still not be able to gain access. So
yeah, MFA is one of those things that if you do nothing else, potentially that alone would help you out. All right, so it looks like we've got some results that are in, and thanks everybody for participating in that. Wanted to just make sure we've got some active participation, and it looks like we've got a range. No one was good news is no one rated themselves a 1 or a 2, so that's great. We've got, let's see, the biggest percentage of people gave themselves an 8, and then there's an equal mix of 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, and 9s. So, and no one gave themselves 100%. So it sounds like
I think that's the nature of this webinar in general. Like, 1s and 2s probably wouldn't even sign up because cybersecurity is not even a priority. And then, if you think you're a 10, you probably aren't here anyway to learn about, how to be more cyber ready because you think you are. So, yep, that pretty much lines up.
Awesome.
All right. So, like I was mentioning, cyber attacks have evolved. And one of the things that really catapulted it was COVID. Everyone going home, working from home, and not being behind the corporate firewall anymore. And then organizations having to figure out how to let people work from home. Us enabling VPN for them so that they can get in from their home computer and work. Opening up remote desktop externally so that they can get in, things like that. Those kind of openings into the network at that time were a jackpot for the attackers. So while we were trying to securely enable businesses to be productive during COVID, the attackers saw a real opportunity, and they haven't let go of that. So they've really amped up their phishing abilities so that they can get your creds. And then they're really sharp at looking for how you can gain access to the network. So they're able to log in as you into your network now, using creds that they've stolen from you or found on the dark web from another breach. So that shift has really accelerated attacks. Now that people are in a hybrid environment or starting to go back to the office, we've seen some ransomware decrease, but that's being replaced by other kinds of attack now, financial fraud and accelerated business email compromise and things like that. So the attackers are using what they've learned and applying them now in this hybrid workforce. One of the things that's really accelerated it also is it's really easy for people to get into ransomware now. You can go on the dark web and buy a ransomware kit and start doing ransomware today. So anyone can get into hacking and start deploying ransomware to people.
How much does a ransomware kit start? What does it cost me to get started?
Well, they all vary, and some of the affiliate networks have, and yes, affiliate networks of ransomware as a service, but they have different levels that you can get in as. I mean, you can see them as low as a couple $1,000 up to $50,000 for a full-fledged campaign. So it really depends on what you're looking for, but yeah, you can start for a couple $1,000, get a kit that's ready to go, and that you can deploy ransomware to companies and make millions of dollars off of. So that kind of low risk, low effort, and high reward is why it's so prevalent. And small businesses also are still falling victim to phishing. Phishing has improved. It's getting better and better, and now they're saying with ChatGPT and things like that the phishing messages will not be obvious as being phishing now. So other threat actor techniques are being carried out indiscriminately against small businesses. What I mean by indiscriminately is there's nothing to stop them from doing it on a small business. On a large enterprise, there's usually more security, more controls in place. There's things to stop the attacker. On a small business, usually you might have a firewall, you might have antivirus, but there's not a whole lot to stop the attacker from being successful. So this statistic from the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, they say 46% of all cyber breaches impact businesses with fewer than 1,000. I think that's extremely low. And one of the reasons is that almost all of the small businesses that we work with that have experienced a breach do not report that breach. So, you're hearing about the big ones on the news, and the big ones are amplified, but no one is talking about the small businesses. And we're seeing it very consistently that there's small businesses being attacked and breached, and usually they deal with it the best they can to try to stay in business and don't report it for embarrassment, things like that. So here's one example.
Real
Yeah.
quick, but before you move on, we're talking about the evolution, and phishing in and of itself has evolved, gotten more sophisticated. You mentioned ChatGPT, which is artificial intelligence that will be able to help attackers write more realistic emails to attempt to phish. Just real quick, what is phishing, and how has it evolved and gotten more sophisticated beyond?
All right. Yeah. Phishing is when you're receiving a message and someone is really trying to trick you into giving them information, and it's usually your username and password. But it has evolved from, kind of the Nigerian prince type, or someone pretending they're tech support asking you for your username and password, which people still fall for every day. You're getting the email and someone saying they're from Yahoo tech support and asking you for your username and password, or your corporate tech support. But nowadays they are setting up portals that make it look like you're logging into your legit site. You're getting an email that looks like it's from Facebook. You have a notification from a friend, you click it, and it asks you to log in, and it looks like you're logging into Facebook, and it'll redirect you to Facebook, so you never know that you have been phished. But in the middle there, it has grabbed your credentials, it's grabbed your username and password. And they're doing the same with Office 365, with Google Apps, with corporate accounts. One of the common ones is that you're getting an invoice from a vendor or a partner, and it's asking you to log into the vendor or partner portal, or a bank notification, shipping notifications from UPS, things like that. But it's all branded, all looks official. Everything looks like it's from that company. And if you're not very careful to check the address, usually you'll fall for it, because the language and everything looks incredibly believable. All right. So one of the examples that has happened very recently, and both these kind of case studies that I'm giving have happened in the last couple months, but a local government and as associated police department was down for weeks. Every file and all their services were down and encrypted. All of their files were breached and auctioned. Basically, the attacker put them on the dark web for sale, and their total downtime was weeks. So they were really affected. Police were having to do things by hand, everything pencil and paper. All of their systems, all of everything that they normally use was not accessible. And same thing with the water treatment center. It had to go to manual. If you think about things like a water treatment center, they have a lot of computer systems that are gauging the quality of the water, gauging the amount of chemical put in, things like that. All of those systems were encrypted and down because of ransomware. So they had to go to manual on those things, but complete devastation. Every system, every computer completely down and encrypted. And the real reason is phishing. Is they were phished. The user was a user on their network was phished, which meant they received an email, went to a portal, typed in their username and password, thinking that they're going to Office 365, and there was no MFA on their account, meaning that when they did give their username and password to the attacker, there was no multi-factor authentication to stop the attacker from using those creds to get into the network. So the attacker was able to use that username and password to gain access to the network and act as that user. Local backups were attacked and encrypted, so that there were no recovery paths. You couldn't use any backup software to recover systems on their network. They did have cloud backups, which is how we were able to recover them. If they didn't have a cloud backup, we would have had to recover them by rebuilding them from scratch with all of their data lost. They didn't have any modern security software or security monitoring. And a lot of the systems, especially like in water treatment, were very old. So a lot of Windows 7 computers, which have been end of life for what, 5 years now, and then a lot of Windows XP and older machines like Windows 2000 machines in that water treatment center that were really vulnerable. There's nothing on these machines to stop a hacker from using every exploit that's been learned in the last 20 years against these machines. And the next example is a home builder, and this is a decent size contracting company and builder that's in the area, and they had a banking and credential theft Trojan, which affected 80 workstations. So every user in the company, all of their vendors and partners received fake invoices, those kind of emails like I'm talking about, from the home builder, and those all contained malware. So all of the company's banking information was stolen, and here's the negative, besides the company information stolen, all of the employees' banking information was stolen also. everyone uses home banking. Everyone pays their credit cards from their work computer. People, it's common to log into your bank from work. And now the attacker has all of the employees' banking information, and they all had to go and change their passwords. And $2 million in fraudulent bank transfers occurred because of this. So all of these creds were used. The attacker could log into the banks and do bank transfers. So if you have MFA on your bank account, that's one thing to protect you for when this happens. But when you don't have MFA on your bank account or your credit card account, then the attacker can go into your bank and do whatever they want. So how did this happen? Same thing. Credentials were stolen. There was no MFA, no multi-factor authentication on the account to keep that from happening. All administrative and accounting email accounts were compromised. So the attacker had access to all of really the core of the company's email accounts. And the computers had no security software, and no one was managing vulnerabilities or monitoring security. So afterwards, we found out that the attacker had been in the network for weeks and, just gathering information. They deployed their malware, and they were gathering creds. So every time somebody would log in over those weeks and, log into their bank, etc., it was gathering that information and sending it to the hacker's server. So there was a high dwell time before it was identified, before those emails started being blasted out to all of their vendors and partners. So with any kind of security software in place and active monitoring, this would have been caught. All right, we have another poll. So everybody wake up. Have you been directly or indirectly impacted by a cyber incident?
I have. Before I worked with Airiam, I had my own small business, and this was probably in the infancy of ransomware. My small business was once again phished. One of my employees clicked on a link, and we got ransomware. So back then, I think this was 2009 or 10 that this happened. They were asking for, I think, like a couple $100 worth of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin wasn't worth what it was today. And even that amount for me, I was like, I'm not paying that. I'm just going to rebuild. And luckily, I did have backups that we were able to rebuild from.
Yeah.
Today,
We've seen
those ransom values have gone up a little bit, right?
Absolutely. That's what I was just about to say is, if you're able to get away with a ransom less than $500,000 these days, you're lucky. Sometimes the threat actor takes it easy on you because they realize that you're a government organization that is maybe helping poor people or something. There's or a nonprofit. They do have some thinking behind it, but if they know that you're a law firm, if they know that you are, if you have the capability or a cyber plan, a cyber insurance plan, and if they know that you are equipped to pay a ransom, they will ask for a very high ransom. We've seen them as high as $50 million they've asked for. So, typically we're seeing $1 million, $2 million. So think about that as a small business, what that does to your cash flow if you're having to figure out how to come up with $2 million in order to continue operating. So that's definitely one of the reasons to buy cyber insurance. If you don't have it, that can be rough. That can be rough unless you have a lot of cash reserves.
Absolutely. All right. So awesome. Looks like everyone that is with us responded to the most recent poll, and 50-50 response. So 50% of the people said they have been directly or indirectly impacted by a cybersecurity incident, and 50% no. All right, let's keep cruising.
Awesome. All right, so limits of old school IT thinking. In the past, we would use what I call a castle and moat defense. So we'd put up strong firewalls. So we'd put up strong firewalls. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Gotcha.
And we'd put up a lot of antivirus in your network, but that's pretty much it. We would expect that the firewall would stop your attack, that you would not be able to that an attacker would not be able to get past that firewall. Now, because of VPN, because of phishing, things like that, the attacker is usually not even affected by a firewall. The attacker is able to keep just sailing right through your network as a user on your network. And if you think about that, the attacker within your network is able to just do anything, access your servers, and do anything you would be able to do. So the assumption that prevention will keep me from getting attacked isn't really valid anymore. There are a ton of controls you can put in place, and we recommend that you put in place to prevent the attack. But we need to really count on you being attacked. One of the, former directors of the FBI, Robert Mueller, said that there are two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. And I like really Cisco's CEO, John Chambers. He came up with a similar quote, but it's more valid, I think. There are two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those who don't yet know that they've been hacked. So really, the assumption is that at this point that you've been hacked. Whether you know it or not, somebody has gained access to your network at some point. So that's really caused us to think about the old school approach is that strong firewall with no defenses inside, and you're a crunchy outside with a soft, chewy center. Now we need to make you crunchy all the way through. We need to make sure that there are additional defenses when the attacker gets within the firewall. All right, so like I mentioned, antivirus isn't really enough anymore. Modern attacks aren't caught by the antivirus since malware is customized for your organization. So we use a tool called EDR, Endpoint Detection and Response. That's the most effective in catching malware because it's detecting how the malware acts. Whereas traditional antivirus had to have a signature of the malware. It had to know that specific strain of malware, where now the attacker is using a different signature every time they're deploying malware. So when they go and hit the company next to you, they're using a different file than the file they're using on your company. So antivirus won't catch those because they're different. So that's why we need newer technology like endpoint detection and response. It detects how the attack is happening. It's not looking for specific viruses in a database. It's looking at how the attack is happening. So many attackers are logged in, like I mentioned, rather than they're hacking you. They're getting your password from phishing. They're finding your creds on the dark web. Your passwords are getting breached all the time by all these breaches you're seeing on the news. So the attackers have a database of all the passwords that you've used. So when they're trying to gain access as you, they're just going through this and trying the 40 other passwords that you've used for these other sites. When they are successful, even EDR won't see them. They won't see it as an attack. It'll just see someone logging in as a normal user. So what do we have to do to protect your critical resources from an attack from you? That's really how we have to think in security now. It's easy for the attacker to gain access to your network. So we have to be ready to recover, because they're going to have the same permissions as you when they gain access to the network. So steps to take, I could go on for hours on steps to take. And if you have an MSP or an MSSP like us, then some of these are taken care of. But I'm going to go through these for those of you who are kind of DIYing it, so at least you are armed. And if you do have an MSP and MSSP, you can kind of lead them in that conversation and say these are the things that we need you to take care of. So first of all, understand what's on your network. Understand what devices you have. And when I say understand, I mean make it like a spreadsheet. Take an inventory of all of your assets. Those of you who are really accounting based probably have this already because you're trying to depreciate your assets and keep track of what you have. But a lot of companies don't know what they have. So all your servers, your switches, your firewall, routers, your wireless access points, your computers, laptops, your phones that are company owned or on your network, and this may include other network devices, IoT devices, printers, things like that. Create that inventory, because as soon as you write it down and you see that list, you'll realize what's old, what is vulnerable. Without that inventory, without looking at it, a lot of people just kind of look with tunnel vision at their laptop. They say, oh, my laptop's new, it's up to date, I'm good. Or, their workstations, but there's a lot on your network beyond that. And, one of the most common entry points besides phishing is through your DVR camera system that everybody has, and they remote view from home to see if somebody's entering their facility. That is, since you can view it from home, it's open to the outside, and attackers hack those all the time. So those kind of things need to be on that inventory. Do you have a lot of older gear on your network? Things that need to be replaced. Is this something you can budget for in the next couple of years? Do you have devices that are unmanaged or unmanageable? So unmanageable means they're too old to even update. Or the company doesn't exist anymore for us to update it or patch the stuff. And then, are they managed? Meaning, is there somebody trying to patch it? Is there someone monitoring it? Is there someone who's actually watching security and the performance of that device? Credentials and access. We'd love for passwords to go away. We're kind of stuck with passwords, and unfortunately, they're still here for now. So it's important to understand what passwords you have, review them, and document them. So keep them on a, keep them in some kind of password vault, whether it's Bitwarden or 1Password or some password management system, and then keep a backup copy. I usually say keep it in, a secured, email address, in your Google Drive or OneDrive or something like that. Why keep a copy of your passwords off site? Well, if there's a fire, if there's a ransomware incident, if there's something like that, all of your documentation that you have on your computer is going to be gone. That'll be completely encrypted or, incinerated. And if we need to rebuild things, or if you need to rebuild things, you'll need those passwords. So when I'm saying passwords, I mean passwords for your network devices, passwords for your server, passwords for even accounts for downloading your software in. You may not have access to those systems that have those passwords in them. So it's important to keep a copy of that. And when you're kind of writing all this down and identifying what usernames and passwords you have, this is your opportunity to really identify what has MFA on it and what doesn't. Does your admin account for Microsoft 365 have MFA? That one absolutely should have MFA. I mean, all of your 365 accounts should, but any admin account, if it doesn't have MFA, you're kind of asking for trouble. So identifying those accounts that don't have MFA so that you can make a plan to MFA them. And then, when you're backing up copies of your passwords and stuff, make sure that they're encrypted and somewhere secure, because keeping a copy that's not encrypted somewhere, is really just offering your creds up, for an attacker. So the last thing here is business processes. Really document your business processes and think about what business processes depend on IT. a lot of your business processes, you think, okay, we can't live without our computer. We have to have our computer for all these things. And that may be true. But when you identify business processes that are completely IT dependent and are a critical part of your business, that is what I call the crown jewels. If your business can't operate without this system, then it's now the crown jewels. And when you've identified what your crown jewels are, then you can layer in more protection ahead of it. All right, Steve, you can carry on to the next slide. All right, let me breeze through these. 0 days. You probably heard 0 days mentioned on the news. 0 days are vulnerabilities that have never been seen before. So there's no way for us to fix them. So 0 days mean that advanced security software like EDR is important. So, EDR is really the message here. Everybody needs it. How to patch, your computers, make sure that they're set to patch automatically. Whenever you're seeing that Firefox or Chrome or Adobe Reader has a patch, install it. There's a reason it's asking you to patch. Usually it's because there's a critical vulnerability in Google Chrome that needs to be patched. So don't just wait on those patches. MSPs like us have a patch management system that patches all of your systems automatically. And then, servers and everything need to be patched accordingly as well. And then create a plan. So systems that you can't patch, there's always systems you can't patch. They may be too fragile. They may be too old. They may be, the company that made them doesn't exist anymore. Things like that. We need to work with you, or your MSSP needs to work with you and identify how to protect those machines from the rest of the world. So there's additional layers of security that need to be put in place. So start building a plan and a roadmap and a budget to replace and upgrade systems where you can. Obviously, some businesses, that critical system, that millions of dollars of investment that you have over the years is an antiquated system that can't be patched now, and is some mission critical thing, but it's extremely vulnerable. So that takes some creativity and some architecture to figure out how to protect, so that, understanding it's never going to go away. How do we put up some guardrails around this and make sure that it doesn't get hacked? All right, Steve. All right. And then assume breach. Like I mentioned, everyone has probably been hacked or is going to be hacked. In fact, there's a lot of estimates that 100% of US manufacturers have already been breached. Really, China is so after plans and processes from US manufacturers that they've aggressively gained access to everybody's environment. Ransomware's targeted at all organizations, especially small businesses. And, so if you assume that you're in a breach state and attacker's already in your business, think about that. What if an attacker was in your business today? What if they're in there right now and you don't know? They might just be gathering data. They might be getting ready to launch ransomware, but they might be, collecting access, collecting passwords. How would that knowledge change your approach to cyber defense? How would that knowledge change your approach to resilience? Okay, if they're in your network, they could drop ransomware at any time. So what do we have to do to recover tomorrow if there's ransomware when we wake up? That kind of thing. So assuming breach is an important part of security nowadays.
So
Immutable backups.
Are you saying that attackers might already be in my network, but they're not, they don't just get in and then just drop the ransomware and shut you down? So they're
Right.
just going to sit there. They're just going to hang out?
Yeah. So there's dwell time usually. So ransomware happens generally pretty quick. As soon as they've identified what data you have, they will start exfiltrating it. Depending on your internet connection, it may take them days and weeks to upload all that information to their servers. But once they've successfully stolen your data, they'll drop ransomware, so that they can sell your data and get you to pay a ransom. But other kinds of attacks, there's a lot of, banking Trojans, credential theft, initial access is a thing where hackers will hack your network, gain initial access, and then sell that access on the dark web to other attackers, so that other attackers can use that access to your network to steal data, ransomware, etc. So they have access to your network, and that may be for months, that may be for a year, and they're in there just looking for data that's valuable. So yeah, their dwell time is a real thing. Yep. And then immutable backups are important because those threat actors will delete your backups. If you have backups in your data center or in your server closet, the attackers look for those. They know that's what's going to keep you from paying the ransom. So they'll look for those on your network and delete them. And so without backups, then you're kind of forced to pay the ransom or rebuild from scratch and lose all your data. So immutable backups are backups that can't be changed once they're written. So that's important because that keeps the attacker from deleting them. So ideally is an air-gapped immutable backup. So you have a immutable backup that can't be changed, but it doesn't just live in your data center. It has a cloud copy. So I encourage, based on this assuming breach concept, assuming that there's somebody in your network today, set up a regular tabletop exercise with your team. And, this could be annually, could be quarterly, whatever. Run a practice session with your company. Run through a scenario. And there are tons of scenarios online. I can get you one if you message me, etc. But imagine that you have ransomware and imagine that all of your computers are unusable. And then imagine that all of your data has been leaked. For some of you, that's no big deal. Your data, you don't see it as high value. But some of you that are maybe in healthcare or have PII or have, top secret information that may be related to a defense contract, what are the implications of that data being leaked? So run through that exercise and think about, okay, if all of our computers are unusable, how do we recover? How do we run business tomorrow? How do we run business in a week? How do we, get the attacker out and continue life? That's an exercise a lot of people don't think about. A lot of people are scared to think about or don't want to think about. And that's really where we're at right now is, and when we're talking about resiliency, it's that ability to get hit and keep going. And that takes practice. So start doing dry fire practices with your company. Okay, actively monitoring threats. When I'm talking about that dwell time, that time that they're in your network, that's this mean time to detect. It's infinite if you have no security monitoring. They can stay in your network until they do something that gets your attention. But most threat actors are sneaky. Most hackers know not to sound the alarms. So they're not going to draw your attention, and they can be in there forever. So that mean time to detect is how long it takes to catch them. And there are a ton of acronyms out there. And, I've thrown out EDR several times. There's MDR, there's SIM, MSSP SOC, XDR. There's a ton of acronyms out there. So, when you're searching for security tools, there's a million. And, about half of them are good. So which ones do you pick? And a lot of them are purpose built. So they serve certain things. One of them might be email security. One of them might be MFA, one of them might be, your log gathering, which is your SIM. But, most businesses need really all these things in some solution. They need all of these. One or two of those aren't going to help. You need to really cover your entire network, cover your entire threat surface. And so AirGuard is really a combination of managed detection and response, extended detection and response, endpoint detection and response, that SIM, that log gathering, and a SOC, which is monitoring all of the threats that come in. So it's engineered to identify, investigate, and stop threats. But when there are so many tools in the marketplace, it's really hard to find out what to use. The goal, though, is to have someone actively, not just using a tool, but because a tool is cool, but it could be throwing a flag all day long and nobody's looking at it. Actively monitoring your threats.
Yeah, we see a lot Art, where people have invested. I mean, especially in the big Fortune 100 companies that we've been called in to recover,
Yep.
where they've invested millions in tools, but then they haven't been actively managing those tools, configuring those tools, right? Because just because you bought the best tool on the marketplace, you can't just you don't just install it and then walk away and you're good to go. You have
That's
to
right.
you might need to update those configurations as your environment changes. And then, of course, as you mentioned, you need to monitor it. So monitoring is great, but if you don't have it configured properly and continuously update it to make sure that it's reflecting your current environment, then it's kind of a paperweight.
That's a lot of people have that bright shiny object syndrome where they want to buy the cool new expensive tools, but if it's not set up right, then like you said, it can be a very expensive day or a week for you. So we've seen that a lot where people have the right tools, they have the right technology in place. It's just not monitored and not configured correctly to help them.
Yep. All right. Well, you gave us a lot of really good information. We do have a number of questions which I want to try to get answered, and feel free to continue to send them. We have about 15 more minutes to run through some of this, and there's some really good questions here. So the first one, which Art already typed an answer to, but I want to maybe touch on it a little bit more, is my company doesn't distribute work phones. Can we still implement MFA? And Art answered, absolutely. There are other mechanisms. So, one of those things is you could have what's called like a YubiKey, or a token key that you oftentimes see with banking institutions, which is going to continuously provide a unique code that you would use as your second form of authentication. You can also put an MFA on personal phones, right? Not everyone may want to do that, but we do see a lot of small businesses that allow their employees to install the second factor of authentication on a personal phone. Are any others that I might have missed there?
So that whole YubiKey idea that kind of you have this RFID key or a USB key that plugs into the computer that really authenticates you. There are a lot of technologies out there like that. I'm looking at one right now, which is a ring that you wear, and you kind of wave the ring near your computer and it logs you in. So there are a lot of MFA options for people that don't have smartphones. Smartphone is kind of the cheapest and easiest because most people have them. So if they're even if they're personal smartphones, I would advise that's still an option, and just say, hey, our policy is if you're going to access our network, we need to have you install this on your phone. And then if they're still refusing to install it on their phone, then supply a YubiKey or something like that. But just having some mechanism in place is going to be important. I would recommend against using the SMS MFA method where it just texts you. Of course, it's better than nothing, but it's been proven over and over again that it's really easy for the threat actor to bypass that. And where they can just call your phone company, pretend to be you, and say that they got a new phone, and they need to get it moved over, and they'll move it over to their phone while they're on the call, and then they'll do the authentication request, and that SMS code will come right to their phone. So I would not use the text message method anymore. But yeah, it's better than nothing, but when we have an option, let's use that push notification, MFA prompt to your phone, or using a YubiKey or something like that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, MFA is probably, if you do nothing else, put MFA in front of everything for every employee. And it's one of the things that unfortunately we'll see businesses invest in the MFA, but then they'll have a couple of senior leaders that will petition and adamantly, even though they're the ones helping to put this in place, insist that they do not have the MFA because it slows them down or it's inconvenient. And I mean, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So
Yep.
immune to this stuff. If nothing else, the most senior leaders are probably going to be the ones that are targeted.
Yep.
Most. So there's a lot of information that we could share on the subject of MFA, password management, and beyond, and we are going to. So as I mentioned, as we were starting, we're going to be running monthly follow-on webinars, and we're going to touch on each of the four topics that Art just ran through in much more detail. So the MFA topic is going to be covered during our next webinar on March 8th. So to keep a lookout for information on that. I believe we'll be sending an email with information on that tomorrow. All right, let's cruise on. So we got another great question. What percentage of breaches or hacks occur on endpoint devices versus internal networks? Art, that one's all you.
Yeah. So I would say up until recently, it's been, up until the last year, it was most of them were on endpoint devices. So, someone would click something they received in their email, and some macro would run in Word or in Excel and give the threat actor access to that endpoint. Recently, though, the last year or so, the threat actor's just been using your password. So they've been logging into your network then. So they're logging into your VPN from their computer and accessing everything they need to access. So then they're not really hitting your endpoint at all. They're going right into your network. Now, the other exploits that are like your remote desktop server, hitting that, hitting your and brute forcing against your remote desktop, or that DVR, like saying your camera system. Those are still being hit left and right. And there are websites like Shodan.io out there that just list thousands and thousands of them that have been exploited. And you can go onto the website and watch anybody's security camera in their liquor store they own, that kind of thing. So it's that kind of hacking is definitely common and is still going on as well. So so we're really trying to cover all of these things at once. But I'd say that most recently, them logging into your network with your creds is the most common attack vector.
Great, thanks, Art. All right, this is another great one. Is it better for a small business to hire an IT person to take care of the security issues, or go with a bundle or managed service from a company?
Yeah, I mean that really all depends on what skill sets you have available to you in your area, in your cost of that person. It's usually more economical to go with an MSSP or an MSP than it is to hire somebody that has that skill set. And the skill set is usually the concern. There's a difference between IT, MSP and an MSSP, which is security focused. And, most IT people have some security understanding, but aren't security experts. So you may need an IT person to help with things, but then still need a security person to help with security. So there's two different skill sets. They do overlap somewhat, but they end up usually being different people. So a lot of that depends on your economies. An experienced IT person is usually going for about $150,000 a year right now. You can get lucky and grab somebody out of school for $50K, but then your skill set is suffering also. So you're really having to compare that economy against really what services you would need from an MSSP or an MSP.
Yeah, I think the other thing I might add in there is when we're talking about IT person versus people, right? Multiple people, attackers work 24/7, and they're always attempting to do damage, right? So when you go with a security service or company, it's going to be 24/7, or it should be. And if not, you might want to look somewhere else. So you always need a team of people looking for stuff, and it is a team, right? There's people that are different specialty areas and have different areas of focus, both within the IT function and then within the security function. So that's one of the benefits you get with going with a company that is going to come in and provide many of those items. All right, this is one I love. Is an audit the same as a penetration test?
No, but they're both important. So, and there's different kinds of penetration tests also. So, you might get tripped up there too when someone's trying to sell you a penetration test. But an audit is usually documentation and kind of checklist verification of what you have in your environment. And that audit can then be used for a risk assessment or a vulnerability assessment, based on what you have from that audit. These are the risks and these are your vulnerabilities. So that audit is still important. That's as part of that first slide that was identifying what you have. That's that discovery and that inventory and really that assessment of what's old and what needs to be upgraded and what's unpatched and things like that. That's what you find in your audit. Penetration test is somebody actively trying to hack your network. And so that's different than an audit. That's you're paying someone who is a expert in hacking, trying to hack your network. And so there are different penetration tests. There's external, where they're just doing it from the internet. And so that one isn't as valuable to me because most people have a firewall. So they're just gonna the penetration tester is just gonna slam against the firewall and is not going to get in. It's when they're actually engaged in doing internal and external penetration testing, and then they're testing your systems inside your environment using that, hey, I stole somebody's credentials off the dark web idea, and then seeing how far they can get inside your network. Because that's really what reality is nowadays. It's not really an external penetration test anymore. It's most of our reality and security now is internal of your network. So they're completely different concepts.
The hacker's logging in, right? So we
Yep.
assume they're already in. So now what? Now how are they going to do damage? And that's what that internal pen test is going to show us. So based on some of the polling we had some folks that were on the upper end of their rating. And a penetration test is a great exercise to run routinely to determine, am I really an 8, or do I have critical impacts that could bring me down? Do I have a combination of vulnerabilities that a hacker could put together in order to gain domain compromise and essentially get access to those crown jewels and shut you down? So penetration testing has changed. It's historically been a human exercise that people would with the skill set would do friendly hacking of your internal external environments. Today we're seeing more and more autonomous pen testing, where we're leveraging automation and artificial intelligence to perform those same exercises. What does that mean? That means historically a human exercise might take weeks or months to scope out. It's going to take weeks or months for humans to go run all of those attempts, and then weeks to summarize and provide a report out. Versus now being able to run a autonomous pen test doing the same exact efforts and having that performed in hours or 24 hours with instantaneous report out on what's happening. So you can do it a lot more economically, and you can run it much more frequently, because with every change in your environment or with every new vulnerability that is being found, there's a new threat or attack vector that someone's going to hit. So penetration testing is something we highly recommend, whether you're on the low end of the security continuum or the high end, to just validate that I truly am secure and there's nothing I need to get cleaned up, because it's a continuous effort, because things are always changing. All right, patching. I know, Art, this is one of your favorite topics. You're passionate about patching. So won't patching shut down my systems for too long?
So it really depends on what too long is. Usually we work with you and identify a maintenance window for your servers and network devices where we'll reboot those, and that's usually about an hour downtime. So and we schedule that for overnight. So it's usually not impacting your day operations. If you are a 24/7 operation, we have some 24/7 clients that prefer us to patch them during the day and just have an hour maintenance window at like noon, because then if there is any kind of side effect from the patching, they know during the day while everybody's there, and it's not something that's cropping up while their night shift is trying to operate overnight. So usually it's about an hour downtime. It can depend if you're depending on the device and if it's old and slow, that kind of thing, but usually it's if we're doing it regularly, then there's not a long downtime associated with it.
All right. And then the last one is, should Airiam be advising our firm when server BIOS updates are available?
So if you want to be advised, we can. Usually our DevOps team, it really all depends on what level of management you have with us also. If you have air control, which is our on your servers, which is your server management, then we will do those BIOS and firmware upgrades already. Like that's a part of what we're doing with server maintenance. As far as, if you have another service which is not air control, we are not actively managing those patches. So it really depends on what level of service. And then there's some brands and hardware may not have that readily available for us also. So, but that's something usually that we're handling automatically as a part of our server maintenance, and then we're sending like a summary of what we did afterwards. So if you're not getting that summary, then I would definitely put in a ticket, and so that our DevOps team can reach out to you.
All right. And then we got another good one. How often should you do pen testing? So historically, we were seeing businesses never do it, or they were being kind of mandated to do it once a year, or they had a policy to do it once a year. Because of the nature of how manual it was, it was a big effort. So that, once a year was seemingly like a mountain to climb in and of itself. With what I was just describing, the autonomous pen testing, which is something that Airiam does offer, and we're running for clients every day. We're seeing businesses adopt a quarterly model, twice a year model, or some of the really forward-thinking organizations are essentially gaining access to the software that we use to leverage those tests, and they're running them continuously on demand. So we talk about doing a test, you take the findings, you remediate, and then you validate those remediations by running another test. And then you rinse and repeat. It's a continuous process. So we've seen some customers running them a couple of times a month, especially as they're just beginning the program. And then as they settle in and they've cleaned up most of the vulnerabilities or attack vectors that we've identified, they might settle into more of a monthly or quarterly cycle. So it's just a great mechanism to validate that that things are working as intended. Or even if you're deploying a new firewall, like let's run a test to make sure that it's been configured properly. Because again, as we were talking about, investing in great technology and tools is a good first step, but if they're not configured and maintained properly, you likely still have an attack vector that someone could take advantage of. All right, well, Art, this was a great session. I want to thank everyone that was able to join us today. We will be following up with a recording and some more information about future webinars. And Art and I and most of the rest of Airiam, we're all passionate about these topics related to IT management and cybersecurity. So feel free to reach out to us directly or through any of these contact mechanisms. We would love to have a conversation and continue to help anyone either just learn more about cybersecurity or get hands-on and help you build a program side by side. So thank you so much. Everyone have a great day and great week, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
All right, thanks guys.